proof of concept funding and presenting proof of concept to access alternative funding and government money. And so what I thought I'd do is use UniQuest as an example, because you'll understand a little bit about what we're trying to do in putting companies together and putting proof of concept, paying for proof of concept. So that's the next slide. So there's a number of different funding mechanisms. I'm going to talk about government funding, presenting quality frameworks, structuring frameworks and presenting quality innovation to investors. Let's see it better there. So the funding sources in Australia all have different guidelines and policies, priorities, and that's the same with most countries. So government funding nearly always has some kind of economic benefit or state benefit, and that's part of the guidelines, and so it's important to know that for each proof of concept funding source, you're going to need to look at those things. The different investment firms like to invest at different times in the development cycle, and so in Australia we have pre-seed funds as well as angel investors, and they all invest up to about $1 million into an early stage development. The venture capital firms, there's a series of them there, but they're all struggling at the moment to find funding from their investors, and they'll have preferences on sector and technology. Some venture capitals like companies with revenue, and that's obviously quite hard in the biotech industry. And some will take higher risks for really well protected technology. So all of those things are important in putting the proof of concept together. So to talk about the government funding, there's now the best government funding for biotech is a tax credit scheme. And the Biotech, the Australian Biotechnology Organisation, has actually been working very hard to try and get this over the line, and it was introduced into Parliament in July last year, and now is probably one of the most generous schemes in the world. And so there's an opportunity for companies who are trying to do work with Australia or in Australia to take part in this. And if you are a company that's not making a profit with a turnover of less than $20 million, that credit is a check for 45 cents in the dollar. So it's very generous, and it's applicable to companies from overseas to come to Australia to get work done there. State governments provide small proof of concept funds, and in Queensland it's up to $75,000, so it's not a lot, but it's a bit of a help to get things underway, like the killer experiments that need to be done to get your project to the next stage. And Commercialisation Australia is another source of funding, and that provides assistance not only with funding but also with skills, etc. So this is from the Commercialisation Australia's webpage, and so any companies there have got access to mentoring, early stage skills and knowledge. They can employ experienced executives from overseas and get a help with the salary of those people, and they're usually the C-level people, CEOs, or often marketing, business development people. There's a proof of concept fund in Commercialisation Australia, but that is not proof of technical concept, it's proof of commercial concept. But it's grants from 50 to 250,000, so it's significant and helpful for an early stage company. And then there's early stage commercialisation grants, which go up to $2 million, and they've just recently been turned into grants. They were initially a loan, which was a bit tough on a biotech company. So there's quite generous funding in Australia at this proof of concept stage. But I'd like to go to the next topic, which is structuring the successful frameworks to attract public and private partnerships. And that really requires knowledge of the requirements of the various investors that you're trying to approach. So it depends on which investor. In other words, is it a venture investor, an angel investor, a seed fund, or is it a government fund, a government funding mechanism? So it's important to understand the requirements to be successful to get these things. So structuring the deal is an important part of getting the funding. You need strong relationships with the researchers themselves, active relationships with the pharmaceutical companies and potential investors, because both of those are investors in biotech, of course, and the ability to combine sufficient intellectual property to structure a proper deal. With my venture capital hat on, I found many deals came to me that didn't have enough intellectual property in there to manage risk. There'd be just it's one shot on goal, and it's really important for most investors that there's enough IP in there to manage risk. So UniQuest is doing this sort of thing. It has 100 people, approximately, who are actively putting deals together out of universities. But it doesn't just work for the University of Queensland. It's owned by the University of Queensland, but it commercialises out of all these different universities on the east coast of Australia down to the Tasmania, so from the north to the south on the east coast. It includes Queensland Health, which is a government organisation which runs a lot of hospitals. And it includes the Mater Medical Research Institute, which has quite a lot of IP. So it's able to pull IP together from a number of sources, and these people work with the researchers. So the scheme is by putting these people out into the various faculties. So there's a hub of skills, and these people are called managers of innovation and commercial development. And they're the people that are actively out in the faculties. They've all got technical domain knowledge, depends on which faculty, because obviously we're not just in health sciences, we do a lot more than that. They have to have industry relevant experience, they have research empathy with the researchers, they're entrepreneurial, they've got a passion for technology, globally outward looking. And we've got 33 of those in the partner institutions and in the university. So it's a model that is beginning to put some real strength and clout into putting a framework around IP and presenting that for proof of concept funding and beyond. So this is a track record. So we've had a lot of startups which, after that initial proof of concept funding, have raised up to $450 million, so quite significant. And you can see on the far side there, the amount of investment greatly exceeds the amount of money that was put in initially. But there's a number of issues that you need to consider when you're sourcing IP and putting that, presenting that framework. Firstly, research quality. It has to be the number one. Then screening to pick the very best commercial opportunities, developing that work plan, and showing proof of concept. As I say, showing that proof, being able to show the proof of concept is really important, but having that work plan and the IP packaged up neatly is the way to get the initial proof of concept funding. UniQuest itself has a small amount of funding, which is from the Pathfinder Fund. So it has its own internal proof of concept fund, but it's very small. And there are also early stage money from the early stage investors. So there's quite a lot to be thinking about packaging the deal. It involves a number of steps, and these are, as you can see, investigating the chain of title, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about when they present a deal to a venture investor. And as an investor, part of our due diligence is really looking at where the IP is. Has the researcher signed a material transfer agreement with some drug company and no longer owns anything? So it's important to understand what that chain of title is and to make sure that the project actually owns all the IP and isn't infringing anybody else's IP. And that diligence is part of that. You really need to spend a lot of time understanding that part. And as a venture capitalist, that's the first diligence that you need to do. Then you need to look at whether the market really needs this product, and is it focused right on the market? One of the mentors that we use in some of our companies said to me, well, one of the problems you get is that companies are focused on the wrong thing, and they're going out to rob the delicatessen when they should be robbing the bank. And that's really true of many of the deals that come to you. You can see that the company's focused on one outcome, and yet there's a better outcome if you really understand the market and the market need. And you work with the inventors to find that. And then you need to build the financial leverage, and that's where the government grants, etc., come in too. There are tax benefits, as I said, and it's important also to have an investor syndicate so that with the biotech industry in particular, that there's enough money going into the early stage deal. And we have a lot of angel groups in Australia, and they've started now to band together so that they can invest together, because a lot of them don't invest large checks, but they'll invest now that they're a bit more organised, and there's an angel association in Australia, that there are really there's enough early stage money there if we know how to access it. And these people, it's important to work with them, because they're not all people that understand the healthcare industry. Many of them come from the IT industry and have made their money there. So it's important that those who understand this industry actually work together with the angel groups, because they are a potential source of proof of concept funding. And I thought I'd just give you some statistics to have a look at. These are the angel groups that we know about. Now, there are also angel groups that are informal groups, and that's much harder to be able to find. But these are the ones we know about. So in Australia, there's 12 angel groups. In the UK, 64, and 340 in the US. So there's a big difference there. But they're all funding around the same amount, between $500,000 and $1 million, really, or just over $1 million. So, sorry, I apologise. The amount of money they're investing is between $150,000 and $200,000. The number of angel groups per million population there is the middle line there. So you can see that internationally there's quite a lot of angel activity now. And it's an important source of funding for us in the biotech industry now that the venture industry is drying up a little bit. And this is a recent innovation with one of the angel groups, that they've built a Sidecar fund, which invests alongside the angels. So they won't invest if the angels are not investing, but it's managed separately, but it just co-invests with the angels. And it'll invest between $100,000 and $500,000. So it's not a lot of money, but it's, again, enough at the proof of concept stage to help these companies get started. And I thought, just to finish off, I'd just give you a couple of case studies where UniQuest has actually pulled together IP, packaged it up, and sold it on to investors. So the first one is a company called Vaxxus. It's a novel technology which has, it's a nanopatch needles. It's out of the Institute of, at the AIBN, where Steve Marler's there. It's an important, it's an interesting technology, a novel technology, which allows you to dry the vaccine onto the needles. The needles actually get into the skin at the level where the dendritic cells are, and so the immune reaction is better, and therefore it needs less vaccine, so it's economical. It doesn't have the cold movement problem. So again, it's a technology that fits very well with widespread populations and out through Asia. It started with a scientist who came to UQ from England. There were a number of patents lodged, lots of presentations, so you don't have to you can't give up. You have to keep trying. Lots of presentations to industry and investors. A syndicate of investors was found. They also got competitive grant funding, which demonstrated the proof of concept. And that Series A was a $15 million round, so very significant. There's now industry interest in this technology as well, so it's attracting strategic investors now too. So you can see that if you package the deal right and you do all the right things and persevere, you can end up with a very good Series A. The second one is a company, QRX Farmer. It's a pain company. The technology is out of University of Queensland. It's a dual opioid technology, so it's two drugs that are put together in an unexpected way, which is what the patent's about. Two known drugs. It started a long time ago. There were all sorts of problems happened there, but the bottom line is this is a deal that got funded by angels, and the angels came from the industry. They were the initial contract fell apart with a pharma company in Australia, and the angels were people out of the pharmacy industry. So they were pharmacists who decided that they'd back this company. It completed phase 2 and then went to IPO. So the initial transaction was a 10 million Series A, so quite a decent sized Series A with a number of investors. And then it was the largest at that time biotech IPO on the Australian market. Since then there have been some larger ones, but that was the largest at the time. So it had an initial market cap of 150 million, which was unknown for an Australian company at that time. This was its product pipeline at the time when it listed. So you can see the latest, the first product was in phase 1, but that's all. And this is its pipeline today. The FDA date is in June for the first product. It's got some further products coming through the pipeline. So you can see that it's now a well-organized company that's on its path to success. So in summary, the proof of technical concept money is available from state government, from angels and from pharmaceutical companies. Proof of commercial concept, proof of concept comes from Commercialisation Australia in Australia. The tax credit funds R&D, so there's quite solid funding there available, but it's the tax credit isn't competitive, but the rest of it is. And packaging deals requires a lot of experience, technical skills, and the understanding